I absolutely love the remake of Halloween 2. I mean, who wouldn't? It makes absolutely no sense. Just like my Nintendo Wii telling me that I'm overweight. I mean, who likes good acting, a story, and a plot? Why keep it close to the original Halloween? I mean, that would just be silly. Hey, while I'm at it, Sucker Punch was my favorite film of the year. Alongside Transformers 2 Revenge of the Fallen, just like it was my favorite film of that year. Sucker Punch is too. Never have women been committed to looking so powerful, so strong, and so great in film. I just love it. From the lack of not making any sense to the atrocious acting. It was great. Nobody can play a corpse better than Emily Browning in that film. She should win an Oscar for being dead. I mean, playing dead, of course. Hey, while I'm at it, Filmmaster Adam is the greatest movie reviewer ever. It's so great. Oh my god. What a horrible nightmare. I gotta stop drinking tonight.
Hall of Mirrors, Tales of Horror and the Grotesque, written and performed for podcast by Mike Bennett. This podcast is intended for an adult audience. Hello listeners, and welcome back to the Hall of Mirrors after our little hiatus. You know, I've missed you. This place gets awfully lonely when no one comes to call. Just me, the darkness, and the screams of the damned that sometimes spill from the rippling glass as I pass by on my lonesome. It's the characters imprisoned inside, you see, endlessly living out their strange or horrible fates. Oh, for some, the fate is merely a walk on the weird side, but for others, like the gentleman we are about to meet today, the Hall of Mirrors is indeed a place of horror. Yes, that's right, listeners. I promised you a horror, and a horror you shall have. Here, can you feel the chill coming from the glass of this, the fourth mirror in the collection? No? Well, come closer. See the frost on the glass, and see now as it begins to thaw with your nearness. It likes you. Now, see the glass too begins to melt, swirling slowly round and around. And now it settles. A window, a portal to another world. And a wet one at that. But we're not in the rain. We're simply looking out at it from the window of a small office. Hey, is that your reflection? Nice rug. Oh, no, it's not you. It's Charles. And that fellow at the desk there, with the beard, the one doing the talking, that's Conrad. Shall we step through? Oh, don't worry. We shan't disturb them, for neither of these men can see us or hear us. Remember? Here, we are the fiction, and they are the real. Flesh and blood, tooth and nail, hair and skin. Charles Mason stared out into the rain-soaked night, trying hard not to see his own reflection in the window. Inevitably, however, his gaze was drawn, moth-like, to the dour visage that stared back at him from beneath the stark, improbable hairline of his toupee. From his left, the voice of Dr. Conrad de Vere slowly ground out the message that Charles didn't want to hear. Charles watched as the rain steadily accreted on the other side of the window, rolling down the face of his reflection like an endless procession of tears. "And so," de Vere concluded, revolving his chair to face Charles, "at least for the foreseeable future, I'm afraid we're left with no choice other than the compromise solution that you currently employ." Charles turned to him.
"You mean I have no choice left but to accept this?" he said, pointing at the hairpiece. "This ridiculous hair hat?"
De Vere offered a small but sympathetic smile. "Charles, your scalp needs time to rest. I just can't keep sewing fresh hair in every time previous grafts fall out. The best thing to do is wear the toupee for 6 months. Then we can do a complete regraft. Perhaps we could try body hair again. That held on for quite a while."
"But I look ridiculous. No one's fooled by this damn thing."
"Perhaps a hat would be better." Charles clenched his fists in frustration.
"For God's sake, Conrad, there must be another way. There simply must."
De Vere shook his head in resignation. "None that we haven't already tried, Charles. I can only work within the bounds of existing hair transplantation surgery, and sadly, you seem to be rather beyond those bounds."
"Damn the blasted bounds of hair transplantation surgery! What kind of a doctor are you?"
Charles turned violently, so much so that one of his hands fluttered to his head to check that his toupee hadn't spun skew-whiff.
"Why aren't you pushing these boundaries back yourself? I mean, what am I employing you for, damn it? Take some risks, man. Do something experimental. Legal, even. You must have some theories you'd like to try out on a willing guinea pig."
De Vere smiled patiently. "Don't get excited, Charles. I understand your frustration. Really,
"No!"
Charles interrupted.
"Sorry, Conrad, but you don't understand my frustration at all. Maybe if you'd lost your hair when you were 17 and endured a lifetime of persecution as a result, maybe if women had always spurned you, tittering behind their scented hands at how your hairpiece doesn't quite pass for vaguely human, maybe if you'd spent millions on failed quack restoration potions, chemical inhibitors, chemical enhancers, and every surgical procedure ever conceived, only to still be as bald as an egg after all of them, maybe then, Doctor, you'd understand."
De Vere smiled thinly, not caring for Mason's intonation of the word doctor, yet well aware that he was in no position to air his distaste. Charles Mason wasn't just his boss, he was his benefactor, and had been ever since the unfortunate mishap 3 years ago, which had led to De Vere's being struck off of the medical register. For a time it looked as though he might be facing complete ruin. Then Mason, his long-term client and sometime golfing companion, had intervened with the offer of a job. Their arrangement had De Vere officially employed by Mason as a health consultant, though in reality he was based here in these grotty little offices in Ladbroke Grove as Mason's private physician and hair transplantation surgeon. Mason had had the offices fitted out as a private surgery, exclusively for his own use. Then he had ensconced De Vere, rather like a doll in a doll's house, as his own devoted medical dog's body. And it was here that De Vere had practiced, illegally, technically, for the past 3 years. It suited Mason to have his own pet private surgeon, and it suited De Vere insofar as he was still able to make a good living as a practicing medical professional, even if he did have only one patient. De Vere knew he should be grateful, but at times like these all he could feel was loathing and contempt for Charles Mason. He was at Mason's beck and call, like a servant, or, he sometimes felt, like a prisoner. Now De Vere looked into the huffing, pompous face before him, and felt, as he often did, an almost irresistible urge to lacerate it with a scalpel, to have another, not so accidental, mishap. But of course that was unthinkable, and so, concerned that his veiled loathing might be leaking from the corners of his strained smile, De Vere bowed his head in a gesture of slight but required deference. "Forgive me, Charles. Sometimes I forget what you've had to go through." He watched as Mason nodded, evidently happy with his apology. De Vere's eye twitched, and he added, unable to stop himself, "But really, persecution? I think you exaggerate. You were born the heir to a fortune. It's not as if you've had to endure a lifetime of loneliness as a result of your condition. On the contrary, you can have almost any woman you desire."
By Conrad, I could buy almost any woman I desire. It's not the same thing.
De Vere shrugged. "Well, maybe you could seek a second opinion. I won't be offended."
Oh, I don't need second opinions. I've had them from the best in the world, along with all their consequent failed procedures.
"Yes," said De Vere, "I know."
Those quacks are neither better nor worse than you.
Charles dropped his considerable bulk into the chair on the opposite side of De Vere's desk.
And all of you are equally useless, at least to me.
"Thank you," De Vere smiled, "I think." Then Charles turned to look at De Vere with a curious expression. He knew De Vere well. The mess he'd made of that poor woman's face 3 years ago had been a splendid boon for Charles. He'd swooped to De Vere's aid in his hour of ruin, and thus managed to procure for himself an admired, or at least once admired, hair restoration surgeon. Since that time, De Vere had carried out innumerable hair transplants on Charles. However, all of them had failed to take permanently. Nothing new there. Every hair transplant he'd ever had failed. It was, he sometimes thought in his blacker moments, like trying to sow a lawn in the Sahara. But at least, by putting De Vere on a modest private retainer, he kept his medical bills down. It was cheaper to employ a ruined surgeon than to pay through the nose for a fully licensed professional of De Vere's caliber every time he needed fresh plugs. And he needed fresh plugs often. But now, here was De Vere denying him the only thing he employed him for. In which case, what was the point of the man? He could dismiss him, but if he did, where would he find a replacement for the same, or even similar, money? He couldn't. Charles narrowed his eyes and scrutinized his doctor.
Give him the Texan option, his mind murmured. That's what you want to do, isn't it? Push him. What have you got to lose?
He squinted harder, as if he were trying to read some imaginary small print tattooed on De Vere's eyes. Charles said, nodding shrewdly.
Perhaps I'm being too generous. Maybe you aren't quite in the same league as those doctors after all, Conrad. I mean, a lot of those fellows are pioneers, experimenters. They aren't afraid to undertake new and daring procedures. You, however, you're just a follower, and followers can never be as good as the men they crawl behind.
De Vere raised his eyebrows and sat back in his seat. Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, Charles. You know I only have your best interests at heart.
I know what my best interests are. They lie in the hands of a man with spunk. A man unafraid of a little experimental surgery from time to time. New procedures, the kind that would take a brilliant surgeon like you to perform. If only you had the nerve, the spunk, to go through with them.
De Vere looked at Charles for a few moments, then said, What kind of experimental procedures do you have in mind, Charles? Charles's hands came together, his chubby fingers locking like a trap made of sausages.
I was reading something the other day. Something about taking body hair transplants one step further.
Really? How fascinating. Do go on.
Well, as I say,
said Charles, leaning forwards conspiratorially,
I've been reading, doing some research, if you will, on the internet.
Ah, the internet, De Vere smiled. Where, exactly? I'm sure you don't need me to tell you the internet is full of rogues and charlatans offering cures for everything from the common cold to cancer.
No, nothing like that. This stuff is genuine. I've been reading about hair and skin, about how hair works, and how it lives and dies, and so on.
Fascinating, isn't it?
No, not really. Not if you're looking for hope, it's not. It's bloody depressing. Or at least it was, until I stumbled upon something that actually did give me hope.
De Vere pressed his fingers together and touched them to his lips. Go on. Charles leaned forward and pointed a chubby finger at De Vere's face.
The cure to baldness, Conrad, is right under your nose.
De Vere frowned. It is? Charles smiled and rubbed his chin.
Your beard.
My beard?
Yes,
said Charles.
Think about it, just for a moment. Have you ever heard of a man who was bald of face? I mean, aside from those freaks who get their balls chopped off and take women's hormones and what have you.
De Vere chuckled. Of course, it happens. Sometimes a lack of testosterone may result in...
Ah!
Charles waved a hand.
Girly boys! Freaks! I'm talking about men!
So am I, said De Vere mildly.
Anyway, it was a rhetorical question. The fact is, 99.9% of the time, beards on men grow like wool on a sheep's back. Right?
Very well. Just to expedite your point, I'll agree with you.
Quite right,
said Charles. Please, continue. You were getting to your point. Something to do with beards. Charles sat back and nodded knowingly.
Yes, beards. Or beard transplantation, to be exact. The hair and skin of one man's face surgically removed and then grafted onto the scalp of another.
De Vere looked at him a moment in silence. Then a smile spread across his face. "You say you read about this on the internet, Charles? May I ask where?"
"It's the theory of a Texan cosmetic surgeon. Highly regarded chap, apparently."
"Highly regarded by whom?" said De Vere. "A list of satisfied customers, all taken at random from a telephone directory?" Charles's expression narrowed.
"Sarcasm doesn't become you, Conrad. It makes you appear small and frightened."
De Vere's expression soured slightly. "What's his name?"
"I don't recall. And anyway, it's not important."
"No? Oh, how unfortunate. I was going to say, if he's so amazing, why don't you go and see him in person? But if you can't even remember his name, then—"
"He's dead,"
Charles interrupted. "Oh, well, that's too bad," said De Vere soberly. Then a smile again tugged at the corners of his mouth. "May I ask how he died? Cutting his own throat, perhaps, trying to demonstrate his theory?"
"I'm not employing you for your sick-lining jokes, De Vere. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but hair and nails continue to grow after death, correct?"
"That is correct."
"So beards effectively continue to live after the body dies?"
De Vere smiled. "Well, after a fashion, yes, but not for long."
"Well—"
Charles again leaned forward conspiratorially.
"What if we could get the beards of a couple of people who have left their bodies to medical science? Organ donors."
He raised his eyebrows.
"I mean, they get completely mutilated, don't they? Poor blighters. Eyes removed, lungs, livers, hearts. But what of the rest? What becomes of the leftovers?"
De Vere pouted thoughtfully. Well, naturally, in the case of organ donors, the leftovers go to the deceased funeral in the coffin. As for those people who leave their bodies to medical science, well, they get used in furthering our medical knowledge."
"And that's exactly what this would be,"
said Charles excitedly.
"All we need to do is get a couple of those freshly dead bodies and remove the lower sections of their faces. Then pack the beards in ice, then hey presto."
"Hey presto?" De Vere smiled and shook his head. "I'm sorry, Charles, but even presuming I were to go along with such a bizarre idea, how on earth do you propose I could possibly gain access to such donors? I'm a struck-off cosmetic surgeon. Do you imagine for so much as a moment that I'm anywhere near the list of people they call when a kidney donor drops off the perch?"
"Ignore the practical nuts and bolts, Doctor. Stick to the theoretical plausibility. Could it be done?"
De Vere sat back and caressed his own beard thoughtfully, stroking the line of his jaw and brushing his fingers through the thick, resilient hair. Well, I've heard stranger theories, I must admit. Facial hair is stronger, coarser, and—"
"And it's a possibility?"
De Vere shrugged. "Certainly it's a possibility. But where would you find a body? Or indeed bodies?" He corrected himself. "You'd need at least 2, maybe 3, to find enough tissue to perform the operation. The chances of a couple of card-carrying organ donors turning up at the same morgue at the same time are virtually nil. Add to that the fact that I can't access the bodies to steal their faces, and that's what I'd be doing. Stealing, grave robbing even. Then, Charles, you get into well-nigh impossible odds." Charles considered a moment. Then he said,
"Okay, so That brings us to the other option.
There's another option?
There's always another option, Conrad. And it's this. Living donors.
Now, De Vere laughed out loud. Living donors? I'm sorry, Charles, but who on earth is going to donate half their face for you to wear on your head?
I wouldn't be wearing it. It'd be a part of me. My hair and skin. My blood and tissue.
Yes, but still, who would voluntarily have such a thing done to themselves? Charles smiled.
The homeless, the desperate, the down at heel. Wave a big enough wand at someone and you could get them to do just about anything. Isn't that so, Doctor?
De Vere's smile fell. Charles continued.
Suppose I could buy some donors. What then? Would it be possible?
De Vere brought his fingers together and touched them to his lips. He thought for a moment. Then he said, Well, it'd be a very dangerous procedure. Even you must be aware that the throat is a veritable forest of veins and arteries. Charles licked his lips.
Mere details. Would it be possible?
De Vere stroked 2 fingers thoughtfully across his brow. Well, I suppose if we were to remove the donor's beard tissue from around the cheeks and above the jawline, staying clear of the throat region as much as possible, then graft skin from their thighs or buttocks to patch up their faces. He pouted and turned to Charles. Yes, I dare say it could work, but the patient would be considerably scarred. He wouldn't go on to win any beauty contests, that's for sure. Your financial carrot would have to be a very tempting one, Charles.
How does £5,000 sound?
Paltry.
10.
25. Charles reacted as if he'd been kicked on the shins.
£25,000?
A small price to pay a man for his face, don't you think? Charles fidgeted in his seat.
I'm obviously paying you too much, Doctor. You seem to think I'm made of money.
Oh, come, Charles. Your father built an empire on breadcrumb thighs, breasts and drumsticks. Farmer Charlie's frozen chicken is probably the most successful chicken food product in Britain. And hats off to you. You've done wonders with the company since he died. You must be worth millions by now. Surely you'd miss 20 or 40 grand like the average person misses small change.
Poppycock!
Charles spluttered indignantly. You asked my opinion, Charles. You don't have to take any notice of it. Charles's lips tightened, gradually drawing back from his gritted teeth in an expression not unlike that of a constipated man straining against the immovable. Then, finally, he thumped a heavy fist down onto De Vere's desk.
Oh, very well. 20,000. But do you think we could manage with maybe just one donor? A big fellow, perhaps?
De Vere shook his head, clearly enjoying the other man's torment. Alas, no. You'd have to take whatever you could get, and most likely that'd mean 2, maybe 3 beards to get a nice all-over covering. Unless, of course, you fancy the Shakespeare look. Charles sighed.
No, very well. I agree.
Then he smiled slyly.
Though it wouldn't be what I could get, Doctor. It'd be what you could get. I would have no part in the locating of the donors.
Oh, I see, said De Vere. And how do you propose that I go about it? Place an ad in the homeless shelters? Distribute flyers under Waterloo Bridge?
That would be for you to decide, Conrad. Perhaps you could enlist some assistance.
You're asking a lot, Charles, De Vere murmured. I hope you don't think that all this skullduggery would be covered by my salary. It's not exactly in my job description, is it?" Charles's eyes narrowed.
"What would you want?"
"The same as the donors." Charles again struck the desk.
20 grand? Oh, damn it, De Vere. That's outrageous.
"I hardly think so, Charles. It's not like it'd buy me a Caribbean island or anything. With these days, £20,000 wouldn't cover the deposit on a one-bedroom flat."
No, I refuse. It's unreasonable.
Unreasonable? Charles, for me to operate on a member of the general public can be seen as a crime in itself. But when you add to that the fact that this would be a highly dangerous operation, one that could have fatal consequences for the donor, why, there are so many ways for me to go to prison here, it's giddying. Unreasonable? Oh no, Charles. All things considered, I think I'm being very reasonable. Very reasonable indeed. Again, Charles found himself straining against the immovable for a few moments, before finally flapping his hands in defeat.
Oh, very well. 20,000. So, do we, at least hypothetically, have a deal?
De Vere smiled. "Are you asking me to go ahead and procure these organs?"
Yes.
"Very well, Charles. We have a deal. However, just one question." Charles let out a small cackle of delight and got up.
Yes, Doctor.
He crossed over to the window. Outside, he could see it was still raining. He checked his reflection and straightened his already straight hairpiece. "The surgeon in Texas. Are there any records of his work in this field available? I'd like to do some research of my own. On which medical site did you access his research?"
Medical site?
Said Charles, fishing out his mobile phone to summon his chauffeur.
I didn't get anything off a medical site. I was searching on beard transplants, and I just stumbled upon him.
Well, what was the site?
Oh, some page all about the death penalty of the United States. Seems the fellow got the lethal injection. His one and only transplant went rather pear-shaped.
De Vere sat forwards. "You mean the donor?"
Yes,
said Charles.
Your risk assessment is quite accurate, Conrad. Still, we bore that into consideration when we agreed a figure, didn't we?
Yes, De Vere murmured. Charles smiled.
He was obviously less of an artist with the scalpel than you are, eh?
He gave De Vere a pat on the shoulder.
You'll call me when you find the donors.
De Vere stroked his beard thoughtfully. Yes, though it may be some time.
Of course, quite understandable. You need time to prepare. Delicate business, I imagine. Beard grafting.
Yes, said De Vere as a smile slowly spread across his face. Yes, I imagine it probably is. What a delightfully macabre proposition. A risky procedure. Dangerous even. But then, what fun would it be for us if it wasn't? Join me next time, listeners, for part 2 of Hair and Skin, here in the Hall of Mirrors.